Hey, I'm Mooch from Pigeonhead Architecture, a channel that's dedicated to making architectural videos. And today I want to try something cool. I want to see if I go out and find an old or abandoned house, hopefully a destroyed house, and I want to try to Photoshop it to make it look nicer. But not only do I want to do that, I actually want to change the whole style of the architecture using this book right here. This book is called American House Styles, and it's, just like it says here, a concise guide of all the different styles that you can find in America. And what I want to do is I want to flip through the book, find a style, and then use that style as inspiration to remake the house that I find. But first, I need a house. So I'm just driving around now, random neighborhoods, and I'm trying to look for houses that look abandoned. I'm going to just spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes driving around. Man, this one's in pretty bad condition, but there's got to be something out here. This is not abandoned, but I mean, the door looks all beat up. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take a picture of this one. It might not be abandoned, but it's definitely not well kept. So yeah, this house is not totally abandoned. It seems like people just don't take care of it. You can see by this broken fence and the overgrown grass popping through the pavement, but it doesn't matter. Next time I'll try to find an actual abandoned house. I was kind of in a hurry this time. But yeah, I'm just gonna turn this into another style of architecture and hopefully make it nicer than it is now. And in case you're wondering what that style of architecture is, I'm going to be using, inspired by this book, Pueblo Style architecture. Now, according to this book, here are a few facts about the Pueblo style. So it was prominent from the 1900s to about the 1990s. It says here that the single most important indicator of the style is the projection of the roof beams a foot or so out from the adobe wall. So it's made out of adobe and it has beams that pop out, and those beams are called vigas, which vigas is actually just a Spanish word for beam. It says that it's common for them to have covered porches called portales, again, Spanish for porch, and the roof of the porch is a wood framework supported by wooden posts, and there are no arches, domes, or vaults. And finally, originally, there were no doors on the lower level, so people climbed ladders to access the upper level. Now, before diving in completely, let's go look at some images of typical Pueblo style or Pueblo inspired architecture to see what that looks like. So I've gone on Google and Pinterest and I've downloaded some images to use as my own inspiration, and we're just seeing some of those details that are used in Pueblo style architecture. Those are those vigas, or those beams that come out of the adobe wall. Notice that it's not perfect construction. It does have that handmade quality to it. This seems to be, well, this is definitely a render, but it seems to be like it's a modern take on the Pueblo style. This is an older style Pueblo style architecture, and that looks, it's a blurry picture, but that looks like the canales or the rainwater spouts. Again, it's a lot of handmade quality, and notice the color palette. We have the rounded edges. It's not completely straight. And I think this is the final one. So earth tone colors, wood, and a lot of vegetation around. So I think I have enough to develop my own. Because of certain details prominent in the Pueblo style typology, I'm not going to do it on Photoshop. It's just going to take me way too long. So I'm actually going to model this whole building from scratch. And let's get to building this thing. So I've finished the overall shape of the house. We have the garage that's going to go here. We have the window that's going to go here. And we have the main entrance that's going to go over here. All right, so I finished making this detail here. This was significantly more complicated than making this garage door, especially because I went back to the photos and I realized that these edges are chamfered, but they're round. They're not going to be angled like this. So I'm going to go back and remake that garage door, but I'll leave that for last. This is the house. By the way, I'm using Enscape in case you guys are wondering what program I'm using to render and to add these funny looking shapes. And this is a car, but don't worry, it'll look better in just a few moments. All right, and here it is. This is the final product. Now let's talk about what I did here, and let's talk about some mistakes that have been made, some things I would have done differently, but I didn't want to go back and spend all eternity on this since this is just for fun. It was just more of an exercise, but so what did I do? Okay, so if we compared back to the other house, the original house, and I'm just gonna flash the image here for a second. So as you can see, this is what the old house looks like, and just keep that in your mind. We have the main entrance here. It's a single door, and we have the garage in the front, and then we have this single door, and then we have this single window here. We have a gabled roof. We have a rain spout or a gutter. We have this small little alley here and another one here, and we have neighbors. So that's the image. When we go back to the one that I recreated, I tried to keep as much of it as possible, so that it could stay as original as possible, but then I implemented the Pueblo style architectural elements into it. So as you can see, the garage is still here. It is a little bit wider now. The door is wider than it was before, but it's still a single car port. Then we have, rather than one big window, I broke it up into 2 windows, and I added those curved edges, those chamfered edges, as the Pueblo style is known for, and you can see that on the edges of the walls. I never went back to fix the garage door edges. I just left them straight. Again, I didn't want to spend all eternity on this. I added a small porch here, which is what is called un portal in Spanish. And here I added the water spout, which is called canales or canal. I also played a little bit with the volumes, so that it wasn't one flat volume as it was before. When I started this, when I started making this, it was just one flat volume. And so I played a little bit with the volume so that there was a little bit of hierarchy going on. I brought this one down, and then I made it like a little platform where you could stand on. And you're probably wondering, hey, there's no rail there. And yeah, I mean, this is a rendering, so those rails would take away from the actual style of the architecture. And I could have come up with a better solution to not have a rail. I could have made this parapet wall extend up higher, but it was just things that I didn't want to do because I like the way that it looks here in this rendering. So not too realistic, but makes it look much better this way. And that way you can also see the people, and by putting a wall here, it starts to mess around with the scale of the person. You can't really tell where they're standing too much, so this way you can tell that they're not quite at the edge, but they're almost there. So I added these beams over here and here. I added on this side some sand and some tropical plants, some palms in the back. And finally, I added a reflecting pond here in the front of the house. And the reason that I did that is because this type of style is prominent in the Southwest, where I assume it's a hot, arid climate. And so you usually want to see some sort of body of water when you're in a hot, arid climate, because that promotes evaporative cooling, which is a passive way to cool the building and to cool the environment around the building. So that's why I added this. But if this was really in Miami, where the original house is from, this would bring a lot of mosquitoes, especially since it's just standing. So what kind of mistakes did I make? Well, as you can see that these beams have no material to them. They're just some dark black material, and it just doesn't, it has nothing. And that's because I actually forgot to add materials to that. It was one of the last things I did, and when I noticed it was too late to go back. Second thing, this wall right here looks so nice. The plaster on it, or the adobe, looks very nice, or the adobe texture rather. It's not real adobe, but it looks nice. When you compare it to the wall on the left, the texture here is completely out of scale. I mean, you can look that over here it's at the right scale, and over here it's at the wrong scale. And you probably didn't notice that at first glance, but it really ruins the image. Again, I didn't go back to change it because I noticed all these things after I rendered it. I wasn't spending too much time looking at everything. Rather, I was just trying to get it done to finish the exercise. Also, it's really dark over here, so you can't see any detail that's going on. I didn't like that. This wall here, this is supposed to be some sort of knee wall that I made in the front of the house for just a little bit of privacy, or more of a division of space rather than privacy. And the way that I set the camera up, you can see it, and it's a little distracting for my own taste. So if I was to redo this, which it could take me a few seconds to fix, but I'm not doing it. If I was to redo this, then I would just step back a little bit, or I would make the wall lower, or I would just raise the camera a little bit just to get it out of the way completely. Also, I didn't add this is supposed to be a rainwater spout. So when the parapet up here fills with water, it's supposed to leak down into the reflecting pond, but there's no hole, so it's not going to work. It's just there for decoration. And again, I did catch that, but this whole entire wall, I made it in Rhino. And so when I brought it, I would have to go back to Rhino and reopen that hole there, and it would just be too much of a pain to do. And then finally, I don't think I missed anything else. I mean, I'm sure you could find some mistakes, but things that jump out at me quickly, there's no neighbors. I didn't put any neighbors. And of course, that's not a mistake. I'm not gonna sit here and model two other houses just to put them on the side. So that's actually why I tried to zoom into the rendering as much as possible. And I also raised these walls here. I didn't want to have fences on the left and on the right, but I also didn't want to make a neighbor. So I got rid of the neighbors completely. I don't think they'll mind. And I wish so I said I was using Enscape. I wish that Enscape had more plant variety. I couldn't find anything. It could be my own fault, but I spent quite a while trying to look for some colorful plants. I felt like this needed some color here. And so, yeah, I couldn't find anything. So I just had to settle for these small shrubs here that add nothing to the house, but I guess it beats having just a blank space there. And so, as you can see, that's something else that I actually added to the house, which is this small planter in front of these two windows. So going back again, what changes did I make to the house? Well, I made the garage door wider. I added these beams. I added this rainwater spout. I played around with the heights of the roof. I created different levels so that there could be small terrace spaces, and maybe in the back there's some sort of jacuzzi or something. Maybe this could have been a jacuzzi here in the front, but I feel like that would be too awkward to have in the front of the house. I think it makes more sense to have it on the side or on the back. And finally, I added this porch cover here, and I made this into a double door. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this little exercise that I did here. Again, I used Revit, I used Rhino, and I used Enscape here. And the only reason that I use Enscape was because I have my little iPad as my secondary screen. So if that's something you're interested in doing, I actually have a quick video that shows you how to do that, how to use your iPad as a secondary screen. I used it for Enscape the whole time. I had the Enscape render live screen view here. It worked like a charm. I even use Photoshop because to create some of this material texture, as you see here, that there's like, it doesn't look completely flat. There's some sort of, you can see, it's called the bump, but it looks kind of grainy. It looks three-dimensional a little bit. It's not just like a flat rendering. I did that on Photoshop by creating a bump file, and I created that bump file here on this little screen. So this thing works like a charm. But again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think.